Hello and welcome to The Power of One. My name is Brian Beery. This is a show that will show you that one person can make a difference, and people are doing it all the time throughout our community. Today I'm very, very happy to welcome to the show Leigh Adams, who is an artist in residence in numerous places, and actually that's where I wanted to kind of start is, can you explain just real briefly where you're an artist in residence and what those kind of mean?
Surely. I'm an artist in residence at Metabolic Studio, which is Lauren Vaughn is working on the LA River project, taking water from the river and cleansing it biotically and using it to water local parks.
Okay.
And that's a project I'm part of.
Good.
I'm an artist in residence at the LA County Arboretum, where I've designed a number of gardens, and the most recent one being the Crescent Farm, and that demonstrates a number of different types of water harvesting.
Great. And was there a third one, or just?
There's a third one is New Horizons School in Pasadena, the garden and the Peace Trail.
Oh, that's awesome. I have several friends who have family members who go there. So what we want to do today is talk about three general areas, so community, art, and water. So let's start off with the water issue. So obviously we live in a desert, more or less. We're bringing water from multiple places, the Colorado River, from Northern California. We also have had a drought, even though it's been augmented slightly by some recent rains. But where do you see ways in which we can live more harmoniously with nature and to use the water we have in a little bit more intelligent ways?
Okay, I call that water optimization, optimizing the rain that does fall here. And as it's raining while we're here in the studio, that water is running off the roof and it's plumbed into the gutters and dumped into the river. It
just disappears.
It disappears, and then we buy water from the places you mentioned, Owens Lake, the Sacramento Delta, Colorado River. We pump it out of the ground until our aquifer is collapsing because we've lowered the water table.
So you'd say we're not doing a really good job of recharging those aquifers. So how could we do that better?
How could we do that? So on your own home, on my home, I actually have quite a wild system at my home. I have parkway drains. When it rains, the water comes down the hill and water comes into swales in my backyard. And I have over 40 fruit trees that produce abundantly. I have a pollinator garden. I have a little paradise in my backyard.
So wait, how does that look? You're diverting water that might normally flow in the gutter and eventually into the drainage system down to the ocean. But you have some sort of a capture system by which it pulls that water into your yard? How does that work?
Generally, I just rely on gravity. I find it's fairly constant. And I have parkway drains, which are generally designed to let water leave a property. But if one were to have a parkway drain, put a swale in front of it, you could bring water in instead of having water go out.
So what's a swale? I mean, that sounds...
It's wonderful. I'm a swale rider.
Okay, well, I've been known to ride waves in the ocean.
All right, good.
But how do you ride what is a swale?
The definition of a swale is a canal that doesn't go anywhere. So instead of connecting to another waterway, it just brings water in and infiltrates.
Okay, so it's more like a construction that then diverts the water in one direction or another.
And brings it into my yard through two main swales. Yeah. Downhill of those swales are mounds where I plant my fruit trees. So the water comes in and it infiltrates. It increases mycorrhizal fungi because of the moisture, and that helps water infiltrate both vertically and laterally.
Yeah. So I'd love to see your house one day and what you've created there. This is sort of tricky question, or one that I've always pondered is, so you did it, and you've benefited from it. How do you get other people, I mean, not just your neighbors, but other people around the city to create similar systems in their yards?
Well, one of the most exciting things is that once you see it, you say, oh, how can I use that? Well, how about that roof over your house and those gutters, storm gutters coming down? If you disconnect one of those from where it's plumbed into an outflow going to the street, disconnect that, put a sleeve on it, and direct that water where you want it to go. You want to move it away from your structure, but you can make a swale, a shallow swale, a dry arroyo, a stone-covered garden.
And that's the how.
That's
which
the
the how is not that hard.
Right.
But it's more the motivating factor. What would motivate people to do that?
Well,
And just to pursue that a little bit further, I think a lot of people in our community, our society overall, they want to do good, but they also, they're used to comfort, and they're used to structure, and they're used to concrete and asphalt. And to ask them to break that up it's a little bit revolutionary. So how do you inspire them to do that?
well, I think I can do that. If you imagine that you no longer have a lawnmower outside your bedroom window or anyone else's bedroom window, you no longer have mowers and blowers and edgers, you no longer need fertilizer, and that through using harvested water and mulch, you can have a native garden, a habitat for humans and wildlife, and grow food and have low maintenance. Not no maintenance, but low maintenance. It's not a bad trade-off. It's very seductive. So you look at a lawn and look at the resources that it's using, and notice how many people are there on that lawn. And it's most of the time, the answer is zero. Put in trees, flowers, have birds and butterflies bouncing around, and you have people coming up saying, how can I do this myself?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My dad downsized recently in the last couple of years, and one of the reasons why he wanted to do that, they sold the house that they didn't need anymore, was to reduce the amount of time and energy that they spent on the yard, and to actually get rid of the yard. So I think you're right. I think it is seductive, and I think it is appealing. But let's look at it from an institutional vantage point, though. You work at the Arboretum, right?
Correct.
So when I go into the Arboretum, I see vast tracts of grass, which probably, I mean, they're permeable, of course, but that's that whole maintenance you're talking about. How do you get institutions like that to think differently about what plants they're planting? And maybe talk about the Crescent Farm.
Okay. You show them a different way. You talk to them about a different possibility. And the fact that if we don't change, we all suffer, therefore it's our responsibility to make changes. And everyone wants to contribute. And when you give them ways they can contribute, they do it. Parks and Rec now has infiltration basins in their parks. They're using mulch. They're reducing lawn size. They are shifting.
Oh, okay.
It's a change.
So you do see institutional change and governmental change
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. Our work in the Arboretum, the Crescent Farm, was presented nationally with LA County as some of the best water reuse practices in LA County.
And so the viewers know, can you take just a short amount of time to describe the Crescent Farm and what it consists of?
The Crescent Farm is 7/8 of an acre in the historic section of the Arboretum. It had been a lawn for 80 years, and we removed that.
That's
80
right.
years of lawn, yes. Called a historic lawn.
Well, 80 years old.
Yes. So we were able to remove that. Fritz Haig did a project called Wildflowering LA, and that allowed us to remove the sod. And I agreed to captain that flagship of Fritz Haig's project if I could demonstrate water harvesting. And so the water harvesting attracted a great deal of attention. We are also demonstrating lawn alternatives, so we have panels that are lawn alternatives. We're demonstrating habitat, we're demonstrating hugels, we're demonstrating 3 different kinds of swales, we're demonstrating terracing, we're demonstrating berms, we're demonstrating French drains and gravel edges.
So I see your sinister side by creating this farm, in essence, because there are dozens of people who come there every day. I don't know what the
yeah, more than
usership
500,000 a year.
Okay, so for those 500,000 people or so, surreptitiously, you're getting them to look at that and say, oh, the lawn over there is nice, but that's really interesting over there. What is that? Is that kind of how it works?
It is. As we've developed the various parts, the various sections of the Crescent Farm, we have been lasagna mulching, which is a technique for building soil that holds water, so that when it rains, water infiltrates in the Crescent Farm, whereas you may see it run off of other gardens. So we're building soil with more organic matter.
Yeah.
And in some areas, we just have mulch. You can't see the cardboard, we just have mulch. And when we started this project 4 years ago, people said, what are you going to do with this? What are you doing here? When is this going to be done? 2 years ago, they were saying, wow, you know, I'm really starting to get used to that. I hope you don't get rid of this.
Oh.
How do we do this at our house?
Right.
And we have followers who come in consistently on our work days so that they learn what we're doing and they can go home and do it. And they are lit up with their water savings, the quality of life. One of my favorite stories is a police officer pulled up in front of a friend's home, and he had lasagna mulched his front yard and put in flowers, and all the neighbors stopped by to see the birds and butterflies and walk their children in front. He met all his neighbors for the first time. He looked out the window one morning and there was a police officer parked in front, and he said, oh, officer, can I help you? And the police officer said, yeah, what is this? And he said, well, it's a habitat garden, it's lasagna mulching, it's water conservation. And the officer's like, no, can just anyone do this? And yes, anyone can. And what a difference it makes. You meet your neighbors because they're bringing their children to see the butterflies in your yard, or the birds that are chasing the butterflies, or the 170 different kinds of bees that arrive.
Yeah, because it's so unique. I mean, we're used to the parking lot, and we're used to maybe a couple of trees and planters around the parking lot, around the asphalt.
Yeah.
And we're used to paved streets. But to see actually a flourishing, native, organic piece of land, that is, that's interesting, I think, to a lot of people.
It's interesting. Many times when we do gardens, say to somebody, well, you're going to love this garden so much, we probably should put a seating area here. Oh, no, I never sit out here. Well, you might.
Yeah.
Then why didn't we put a seating area? Can you help?
Yeah, let's install seats now.
Yes, because it isn't the same as a boring lawn. It's dynamic and it smells heavenly. When you drive up to a native garden and get out of your vehicle or off your bicycle and catch the scent of the wilderness, the hillsides, it's magical.
Yeah, it's mesmerizing, captivating. So let's talk a little bit about art. You're an artist in residence. A lot of people would say, well, shouldn't Leigh be a gardener in residence or a farmer in residence? Why artist in residence, and what's the nexus point for art and water, and art and landscape, and art and nature?
Okay, I'm a teacher, and I've not only worked with humans, I've worked with great apes. We are visual thinkers. Not everyone learns auditorily, but we all learn visually. and some of us are social learners, some of us are kinesthetic learners. By incorporating art into what I'm doing, I make it accessible to everyone. Not only do I make it accessible to everyone so that young children can learn the water cycle from a mosaic in the garden, that mosaic was made on Skid Row in Los Angeles, providing income for homeless and low-income people, who also learned about the water cycle. We teach those children, and then they go home and they teach their parents. So the visual cues help support the message, but it organically gives it to more people. And when we understand where the systems are breaking down, then we can contribute to repairing that. There's another piece of that, which is community. The more people who contribute to art in any environment, the greater number of stakeholders and the more likely the success of the project.
Yeah, so a community art project. Can you go a little bit deeper into that whole thought of building community? I think that, again, not only thinking about the physical landscape that we exist in, which even just outside the door of this building is filled with cement, concrete, asphalt, human-made structures. So there's that context, but there's also the technological one, and then the one where people are very focused on their own lives. How do we get them to think of interconnectedness, and that we're actually better off if we do work together, partner, and form relationships?
Well, I think one of the things that we often overlook is that we marginalize so many people. I'm not a gardener, I'm an everything. I'm not a teacher, I'm also a librarian. I'm also a caretaker of the earth. I'm many different things. And we have specialized to the point that we have people retire and then not know what to do with themselves. They could be with children and schools teaching children how to garden. We could unplug those electronic sprinkler systems and put in native gardens, which require a lot less water, and have the people in the neighborhood, the stakeholders in this building, this neighborhood, come and take care of those things. We have homes for elders where everything is done. Everything is done for them. But if we let them have a garden and we have people growing things, we can have the people harvesting things to use for fresh food. We can have people cutting flowers and having flowers on each table. We can have children from the local school come over and have a tea party in our lovely garden where someone has a responsibility of filling the bird feeder or the bird bath, so that everyone has an opportunity to contribute.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that everyone has a role, and it's just really our task or our challenge to match those people with the role that is suited for them.
Yeah, create opportunities. They're everywhere. Children worked with me on a project at the Arboretum, actually on many projects at the Arboretum, but there's something called the Serpent Trail, or the Australian Dream Snake, that goes, it's a fifth of a mile long. You can see it from the space station. And it's... You
can see it from outer space?
Yes. They can see a lot of things from outer space.
Oh, yeah. With their binoculars, I'm sure they can see a lot.
That sidewalk is the recreation of an Australian creation story of Wagal, or the Australian dream snake. Many children worked to create the pieces that went into the mosaics in that sidewalk, and many more children worked on the mosaics. When those kids, well, they're now, that was 10 years ago, they're now teenagers or older, but they still come through and they still show their friends what they did. But most significant was that when they came through with their schools as 4th or 5th graders, the kids are tossing out their candy bar wrappers, and those kids are saying, "What are you doing? This belongs to all of us. We have to take care of it." And you've created caretakers and stakeholders by letting them have an art opportunity that they'll never forget.
Right, right. You talked a little bit about Australia, and I know that you brought, well, one is Mayan. Is the rain stick from Australia? Or
Rain sticks are from around the world. American
Oh, okay.
Southwest is the tradition that this one comes from.
But since we talked about water and rainwater capture and those sorts of things, I was wondering if you could describe what the purpose of the rain stick is, and then maybe we could listen to it.
So in the American Southwest, they would use cholla and put thorns into it and create something that makes the sound of water. And that was used in ceremonies, shamanic ceremonies, celebrating water and thanking the spirit for giving water to the desert.
So it's an appreciation.
It's an appreciation
And
of water.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's something we've moved past.
We have lost our appreciation for water. We use drinking water in our bathrooms and washing our cars,
Yeah.
our driveways. We wash our gutters with drinking water. How ludicrous is that?
Yeah, so can we listen to it?
We can. Would you like some spoken word poetry with it, or with just the sound?
Do whatever, yes, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Okay. So imagine we're in the Amazon rainforest, and our children have gotten up and they're out and they're running about, and the dogs are moving around, and the women are working. The women are always working. The men are preparing to work. The monkeys are howling. The birds are quack, 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 clacking up in the trees, and the first drops begin to fall on the canopy. The children just scream louder. The dogs bark some more, but the monkeys know to start taking cover and finding a leaf to hide under, a big leaf. The men laugh, and the machetes go away because we can't get our tools wet. No work today. The grandmas run outside and put the big pots outside to catch the water to cook the dinner later. The women wash the clothes, they put them out on the bushes, and now they're bringing them in so they won't get wet again before they dry. And the rain falls, and the children quiet, the dogs move under the homes, and it rains. The waterfalls fill, the rivers fill, the cascades. Dinner is cooked. Children eat and go to bed. The rain continues to fall, and we give thanks. We are grateful, for tomorrow there will be food and water.
Yeah.
And that's for people for whom it rains almost every day, and still they've found a way to be grateful and give thanks for the rain.
Yeah, there's this intense appreciation, I think, that they demonstrate, which is extraordinary, which we have to recapture. So why don't we do the Maya?
Well, I'll show you what.
Or do you have it? Do you have another one?
One more thing with
Okay.
this. So that's how an American plays a rain stick.
And the smoke stick.
Our water's going up in smoke. We just all went at one time and we didn't think about it.
Oh.
And who taught me to play it the other way was a shaman from the rainforest of South America, and showing me that there's a different way to think about water, hear water, experience water, and honor water.
That's fascinating. I think you're right. I think if you handed that to a North American, they would be like, oh yeah, this is really cool. Let's see how much noise it makes, and then turn it all in one.
It is, because
Yeah.
I made the instrument, and that's how I played it until Anan Nunink, which has 2 silent Ks in it, played it and taught me a different way.
Okay. So let's hear the other one.
Okay,
And it's
this-
a Mayan.
So this is called an ocean drum, and this was a Mayan instrument, pre-Columbian instrument, and I was taught by Guillermo Martinez, but the form was rediscovered by Javier Quijas Ixayotl, who is a Huichol shaman.
I'm just flabbergasted. I'm amazed at how much noise that makes. That's incredible. And so what's the symbolic nature of this instrument?
That this is not a drum you pound on. It has four, in the Native American world, you honor north, south, east, west, up, and down. So the square shape is to tell you it's not a normal drum. The Maya used these with jade marbles inside. I don't have jade marbles.
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful instrument.
Thank you.
So in the last couple of minute that we have, what do you think that people can do in the short term to change their lives, to be more conscious about both water and, of course, protecting nature, but then also building community?
I think they all fit together, because when you start thinking about community and sharing resources, instead of each one of us needing to go out and buy our own chop saw, we could share mine. Hey, that would work. And by the way, when you come over to use my chop saw, could you help me carry this over there?
Yeah.
And oh, when are you going to work on that project? I'd be happy to help you with that project. Oh, you need some lumber. Do you know a friend is taking down their tree? And I know a miller, he could mill that wood if you don't have to have it right away. Building community is an organic thing. Everyone wants to contribute, and we need to find ways to do that. So what can each individual do? They can start thinking about where their water comes from and where it goes to, and how long you're leaving that faucet running for no reason. And turn the water on, washing the lettuce, and you're walking over to the refrigerator. You got to know that I'm going crazy and I want to say something so badly, and I'm biting my tongue, and I'm probably going to say, I need to leave because I can't watch this. But it's my job to say, do you realize how much water is going down the drain?
Right.
And where I have to get over some of my personal need to look good, and I need to advocate for the planet, for our children, and for the future.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it, and I loved bringing your instruments. So thank you for being on The Power of One.
Thank you for having me.